150 people registered, so I'm just going to give it a minute while we wait for attendees to come in. Then I'll start with a few just housekeeping notes, and then we'll get going. Right, good morning. I'm going to start. I think we've got a good critical mass. Welcome everybody to the announcement of the Nedbank Private Wealth Innovation Awards. My name is Rebecca Mary. I'm a senior consultant at Trilog, and Trilog has been contracted to design and manage the awards on behalf of Nedbank Private Wealth. I would just like to bring a few housekeeping notes to your attention. So firstly, could you just make sure that your name and organization are properly represented in your Zoom profile so we know who we have with us? And then we encourage you to please ask questions throughout the session. You can do this using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be going through these during the session, and there'll be some time towards the end to ask the panelists to respond. So please, if you can, direct your question to one or more of the panelists and keep it succinct. The chat function is also open, and delegates can use this to discuss any topics and talk as we go through. But if you would like a question to be answered, please make sure to put it into the Q&A because we will only be looking at that for questions. And also on your chat function, just make sure that you've enabled the option that says to all attendees, otherwise you might only be talking to the panelists. So just make sure that you've got that. And then, yeah, I'd like to, please also note that the session is being recorded. And then I'd like to hand over to Notolo Tlongwane, who's the head of philanthropy at Nedbank Private Wealth, just to officially open our session. Thanks, Knox.
Thanks, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to everyone connecting with us this morning, all the nonprofit organizations represented, our guest speakers and panel of judges, colleagues and partners. Thank you for connecting with us for this proud moment as we highlight and acknowledge the remarkable work of the nonprofit sector. We are truly excited about today's convening and announcement of the winners. We recognize and appreciate the crucial role that nonprofit organizations fulfill in our communities and the extent to which communities are dependent on the services that nonprofits provide. I can think of no better tangible representation of Nedbank's purpose to use its financial expertise to do good for people, families, business, and society than the essence and spirit of these awards. The past year has truly tested the resilience of organizations and institutions globally, including the nonprofit sector. And not just in terms of the ability of these institutions to maintain themselves financially, but also to meet the unimaginable growing needs of communities. Despite the constraining and inhibiting conditions brought about by the lockdown measures, in particular the hard lockdown, and the limited resources they had at their disposal. True to form, many of our local nonprofits were able to respond innovatively during these testing months. They used technology to their advantage and were able to continue providing the vital support and help that millions of vulnerable South Africans needed so urgently, further reinforcing just how important a role they fulfill in our society. As we build back our organizations, institutions, and communities, we need to build back better with greater emphasis on building resilience. COVID-19 highlighted the need for the social sector to invest in systems, tools, technology, and leadership development and prepare the sector for future crises. And through these awards, we hope to inspire nonprofits to higher levels of such resilience, innovation, as well as digital enablement, and to also encourage donors to support organizations on this journey and invest in these enablers of greater resilience. And for us as a business, this is another way in which we are expanding our commitment at Nedbank Private Wealth to grow and strengthen philanthropy in South Africa. Achieving this also requires that the country has a resilient and vibrant and thriving social sector, both now and in the future. This morning's convening, as we reflect on the overall lessons gleaned from the 147 entries received, could not have come at a more apt time, as the devastation of the Cape Town fires still so fresh for us all. Once again, highlighting that resilience and ability to respond to and withstand a crisis is essential for all organizations and institutions, regardless of their size or sector. Now, to share some insights on NPO resilience with us this morning and highlight some patterns, trends, and opportunities observed during this period, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome Bulelwa Ngewana, Director of the Open Society Foundation. Sis Bulelwa, thank you for taking the time from your ever-demanding schedule to come and share with us this morning. I know that COVID hit us just as you took on this new role, so it pushed you even further out of your comfort zone. And I know you've got interesting stories of how that made your start to the new role very interesting. So Stella, I'm going to hand over back to you now for your sharing.
Thank you, Nakolo. Thank you very much, colleagues. It's really wonderful to be here. I must congratulate Netbank Private Wealth for the virus that requires that you be simply in close proximity to someone that you don't even have to speak to get it. It's a virus that has resulted in lockdowns. Through those lockdowns, we've seen an amazing amount of human rights violations. It's a virus that requires that if your job requires that you be present on site to be able to do that job under COVID is gone, because you simply cannot be able to be on site to be able to do it. And suddenly a lot of jobs have been wiped out. Some of them jobs that could never be able to be recovered again. I just think of the informal economy. And of course, we need to think about the NPO sector. What do you do if your work requires that you do have a lot of your staff that actually do home visits, a lot of your staff that needs to drive around and pick up victims of violence? What do you do when, in fact, you know that during lockdown, the victim is locked down with the victimizer, and there is no way of being able to reach them? We've seen all of these happen during COVID. And so I really appreciate that Netbank has been able to come up with this award. It is a hard-won award, and those that have been able to apply, first of all, showcase their resilience and innovation during COVID, I applaud them. And those that are the winners today, of course, somebody has to win. I really celebrate their ability to showcase their innovation during this time. I am going to leave the innovation to be showcased by our winners today. I just talk about, from the philanthropy side, really what has been the most challenging factors, and also what has been the opportunities that we've seen during COVID. We've all faced it, and we were not ready for it. The philanthropy sector is not known for its great agility. We are not a humanitarian organization as OSF, we're a philanthropy, and therefore we had to figure out how to pivot as fast as possible to a system where we can be able to assist our grantees and be able to get the money out the door to where it's most needed. More importantly, we had to look at what sort of stable is, what sort of grantees are in our stable, and what sort of grantees we have to reach out to because we haven't been able to onboard them for reasons of eligibility previously. So we had to look into those grantees that have a reach beyond just urban areas into rural areas, smaller grantees. We had to review our own appetite for risk and be able to say it doesn't matter if a grantee is unable to provide us with a tax certificate, but we will be able to get that money up to 250,000 if it's going to help them be able to get the PPEs that they need, or be able to get the food security that is food security that is needed in the area. It has been one of the most exhausting periods because working remotely doesn't come naturally, even though one would think that this is something that every institution should be able to do well. We don't do well when we work remotely. We work twice as hard because every single conversation that we have to have as an institution requires that we meet on Zoom. People have been Zoomed out, and we use blue jeans in my institution. Again, people have just been really exhausted by being on back-to-back meetings, even though that would have happened on a daily basis. But when it's happening remotely, it just makes it that much more difficult. We also have had this issue of not being able to separate work from home. And if you're working in the NPO sector, chances are this is a calling for you. And so your job doesn't stop at 5. Your job continues. And when that job is being carried out in your own house, it means you really honestly don't have a separation between the profession you've chosen and your domestic life, let alone the fact that some people really don't have the ability to be able to have enough space in their homes to be able to work from home. And so we've had to really be able to dig deep in order to be able to understand the onerous needs that have been put forward by COVID in order to assist our grantees to sustain themselves and to stabilize during this time. What does it mean to be able to work in a rural area and be seen as always in a computer when everyone around you is busy going around doing chores as normal? Because in most cases, the people that you work with, because you are usually in an office, don't recognize that as work. They see you as being challenging and not being able to put enough effort to support the household. Those have been some of the issues that have come up. Today we're sitting with about 372 new cases of COVID. People tend to behave as if COVID is gone or we've been vaccinated. Neither of those things are true. It just so happens that the curve is flat, and that whilst we're having 21,000 cases on the 7th of January, and around about 19,000 average cases on a 7-day period, the fact that we right now today we have about 372 cases and about 790 in a 7-day period, it doesn't make it better. Because if you are one of those 372, for you, COVID is a reality. I am hoping that we can get to a stage where we see a vaccine rollout. I know about 1.5 million or so people in South Africa have been vaccinated right now. We are working hard as Open Society to see that when we do get vaccine, we actually have vaccine justice in South Africa, and that the most needy are able to get access to the vaccine. One of the things that COVID has really allowed us to do as a philanthropy is to look at our inefficiencies in our grant-making system and to learn from them. We had to change our system to better provide assistance to those that need it. Ultimately, our COVID-19 response strategy has always been to ensure that we sustain the sustainability of the civil society sector is a goal that we achieve together with other philanthropies, of course. And this is why it's so rewarding to be here today, this morning, to learn about what people have been doing in the sector and how the winners of this award have remained standing and have had, in effect, decided that this crisis was too good to waste, and therefore they rose up to the challenge and have been able to pivot and innovate and be creative in providing solutions. It's really when the sector was needed to move the most, when it was hit the most by COVID. It forced us, all of us, out of our comfort zones. Has brought about several positive changes in the sector. I was very impressed to see grantees collaborating and actually forming movements in order to ensure that they actually are able to harness and leverage each other's work to be able to deal with the pandemic. One of us funds the same grantees in the philanthropy sector. So during this time, we saw increased collaborations, increased communication between the various philanthropies to ensure that we leverage as well as be able to learn from each other. We also moved away from face-to-face and in-person engagement with grantees to be able to allow grantees to tell us what is needed the most and not wait for us as a philanthropy to be able to direct what they need to be doing. It was absolutely encouraging to see proactivity in the sector that has allowed us to be able to fine-tune our own strategy as an institution. Of course, it's very difficult sometimes to ride out the storm. People get fatigued and people get tired and people get absolutely burnt out by the high level of and high impact of work that is required during this time. So internally within Open Society, we've also been very aware of that fact. So we periodically gave our own staff time to really shut down and be able to revive themselves, because we are aware that COVID does not only affect us physically, there's a huge amount of psychological impact as well, as we lose people and getting people that we love, people that we know, colleagues that we've worked with, and getting almost numbed by the repetition of funerals that we have to attend remotely, but also the worry about our own relatives and the worry about our own sense of safety and the continuous struggle to be able to trust that the people that are next to you actually provide you with safety. So it really takes its toll in many, many different facets of our lives. We've also had to diversify our sources of funding. Knox mentioned, for example, the fires at UCT. I mean, for us, climate action and post-COVID economic recovery, they go hand in hand. And so we've had to be very clear that when we look at how we're going to support this sector during COVID and post-COVID, we need to be looking at building back better, but not just building back better, but ensuring that we also have an inclusive and green economy as part of our recovery. It is an opportunity that we can't afford to miss. We also have an opportunity now to look at the informal economy and be able to recognize just how many jobs have been created in that economy and how many of those jobs have not been recognized by the formal sector, and how many of those jobs needs to come back and they need to be registered and they need to be recognized. The other sector that we've also identified as OSF is the independent media sector. Around about July last year, we became very aware that almost 700 journalists had lost their jobs. And so we had to pivot towards that as Open Society and offer support in order for us to understand, to ensure that the independent media sector is supported. Our democracy would not thrive without an independent media. They are important to us as the rest of the other sectors that we support. We've also, of course, been able to invest in being able to tell the narratives of COVID as experienced by communities in many creative ways. So we've used artists, for example, to be able to tell the narratives and the stories that come through from communities, which are really important as case studies and sometimes as narratives that people need to hear and understand. And through that, maybe healing might be able to really be a reality for all those communities that have been decimated, especially rural communities where such deaths and the pace of death and the ritual of death were just not possible because of COVID. And horrific stories have been told over and over again about people burying the wrong bodies, people not being able to grieve fairly, whole households being decimated, and therefore children left alone without parents because of COVID. My message to the NPOs today would be to allow yourself to get things wrong, but to learn from your mistakes as you move on. It's okay to test things. It's okay to be able to pilot things or programs so that we can actually get innovation to become a continuous part of our sector, not an event that happens or something that happens during a crisis. One of the things that this pandemic has done is to really highlight the interconnectedness of the world, but also the fact that government alone cannot solve society's problem. We need to be able to work collaboratively as the private and civil sector to be able to really reboot and press reset and be able to recover from this pandemic. It's no longer going to be enough to only just throw stones at each other and blame and name and shame those that get it wrong in the sectors. But it's going to be really necessary for us to remember that our democracy came through dialogue. And therefore, dialogue might be our ability to co-create solutions going forward. Government alone can't do this. The private sector itself cannot do this. We need to do it collaboratively. Each of these sectors have got different strengths, and it's those strengths that we need to put forward as we look at being able to recover through COVID. I think most of us used to think that the worst thing that could happen is our economy being junk status. COVID has shown us that it's possible to have the worst of the West, And so let's take this opportunity to actually look at how do we recover collectively and be able to, through that, strengthen our ability to stand up as a country and be able to showcase our innovation and be able to come up with really ground-breaking as well as ground-rooted solutions to the problems that we have. I would like to thank the organizers of this platform, Netbank Private Wealth, for inviting me to speak today. And congratulations to the winners. I hope that everyone here will take a lesson out of all your work and be able to see how we can replicate the innovations we've come up with in our own work as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sibulelo. Thank you for sharing so generously with us. I'm just going to draw out one nugget from the many that you shared this morning, and that is of risk-taking. Now, this is something I'm particularly passionate about. How do we as donors encourage innovation? It does require us taking a bit more risk, giving flexibility to organizations, which means more discretionary funding as well. You mentioned it's okay to test things, to get things wrong, to pilot things, and these are all key principles for innovating. And how do we embed that innovation and innovating as we build back better? Sisbulelwa, thank you so much. We appreciate your participating this morning. Now I'd like to welcome a colleague from Netbank, Vinolian Pillane, who is an executive in the digital fast lane team within the business. Now, this is the team we all want to be part of at the bank, the team that is bringing our clients some really cutting edge innovations, looking at where we come from as a traditional bank. They are pushing the boundaries and really transitioning our business. Vinolian is going to share with us some universal principles for adapting technology for all organizations, both private and not-for-profit. Vinolian, over to you.
Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. Okay, good. Just double checking that the slideshow is there and everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Let me go ahead. All right, great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today and share some insights. My name is Vinolan Pillay. I'm a digital transformation executive in the digital fast lane at Netbank, and I focus predominantly on disruptive ecosystems and platform businesses within the organization. So a lot of what we've done within Netbank, platforms like Unlock.me, SimplyBiz, Avo, that stand as a force for good, where they're helping youth or helping businesses or enabling markets in the environment across education, health, etc. That's the kind of areas that we play in. And since I joined the bank in 2016, we've gleaned a number of lessons that I want to share with you that I've tried to sanitize into this concept of technology as an enabler. So let me get into it. Sorry, I was going there. Okay. So I think one of the biggest principles that I'd like to discuss is that, 8 of the top 10 companies by market capitalization are platform businesses. So by this, we know from a technology perspective, when we look at our value propositions as an NPO or even a private sector organization, we know we are heading towards this economy of platforms that integrate, talk to each other, bring value in many different ways, and sort of unlock value across many different value chains. So when we as Netbank looked at it, we looked at it from the context of, this is where the world is heading. And the last 5 years has really been around looking at platforms and how technologies come together to create platforms as a foundation to create value propositions. And I wanted to share a bit of a nugget with you. There was an Insight to Impact report that covered around 277 platforms across 8 African countries. Now, these are double-sided platforms that have transactional value. And as you can see, the African continent already has embarked on this journey of platforms. I mean, this report is probably about 2 to 3 years old, and there were already 277 platforms in double-sided platforms creating value across, whether it be e-commerce, freelancers, e-hailing, logistics, rental, and other. And the reason why I brought this up is once again to demonstrate this point around platforms and the role that technology plays in our propositions to have an interconnected platform that we go into. The next principle is really around how do you play in the innovation area? So when you look at your organizations, when you look at your businesses, this is how we looked at it from our perspective. We said to ourselves, how fit are we and as our teams to be able to innovate, to be able to understand value propositions, understand customer experiences, understand how technologies come together in a responsible way to allow us to integrate and move at pace. And this was really a function of our ability to ideate, how our fitness in ideation, solve problems, identify opportunities, partner with various organizations, being able to connect the dots, and figure out how these propositions come together, understand the enabling technologies, execute, test, learn, pivot in the market, and scale. So this fitness thing became a really, really important thing when we looked at technology as an enabler. And from a fitness perspective, we've broken it down into a model that I like to refer to when I talk to my teams. It's around what is our knowledge index? What's our experience index? Our mentorship index and our network index. And these 4 indexes really talk about investment protection and our ability to use the investment in our context and how that the bank has given us, or in your context where investors or shareholders, to maximize the use of that investment responsibly, because investment is limited, especially in the African continent, especially if you're in a nonprofit organization as well. Your ability to be able to have many pieces of the puzzle, to put them together at your fingertips, is core critical. So to give you an idea, I'll give you an idea of what does my puzzle box look like. So over the last couple of years, I've reviewed over 600 plus platforms. Every week I look at 2 different pictures and videos just to increase my knowledge. We read and learn continuously around various insights from consultancies, etc. We've conducted site visits across the world. We've created a network of experts. We subscribe for courses, and all these things come together and create more pieces of the puzzle in our puzzle box that we can use to improve our propositions. So to give you an idea, one of the nice mechanisms from a value proposition perspective that we utilize is called a teardown, right? It's not a new term, but it's around accelerating design through teardowns of similar. So we look at, for example, the fintech market. We'll take the top fintechs or the top propositions in the market, and we'll dissect what is their strategy, what is their business model, their operating model. We look at their customer experiences and we dissect every single aspect of it. So when we build our e-commerce experience, as an example, we looked at what technologies enabled e-commerce experiences. What's the best technologies, Magento versus something else? We then looked at how does the customer experience, and we found out that the big players in the market don't have the best checkout experience. There's smaller players that have a better checkout experience, and we quickly replicated those things because we need speed to go to market with the limited investment we have. We dissected application architectures, we dissected infrastructure, understood cloud. And cloud, it was important. We had to understand, where does cloud sit? Where is data held? What jurisdictions across the market? From an application in architecture, it was about security, cybersecurity, etc. So these things become really critical. And to learn and make mistakes on your first time around, when you had the opportunity to learn from others, I think is key critical. I just want to play a video for you very quickly, which I thought was a cool one, which is really around, the impact of the teardown. This is from a movie. Some of you may recognize it.
You understand, Mr. Jennings? You've just done in 2 months what we've been trying to do for 3 years.
Sometimes it's easier if you work backwards.
So that was from the movie Paycheck, where Ben Affleck went in and he re-engineered or reverse engineered a piece of technology to make it better within a 2-month or 3-month period. It's the same principle that we utilize as well. So these teardowns, just to go into a little bit more detail around teardowns, what do you need to understand? We look at it from a strategy perspective. We tear down the vision of organizations, the mission of organizations, the purposes, their values. So, for example, when Amazon talks about their purpose, their value system, and how it links into their operating model, even as far as their technology enablers, it is key to understand how you are going to create your strategy around that. We look at business models in terms of markets and segments that companies look at, their value propositions, their pricing models, their margins, and we're going into quite a bit of detail dissecting all of these to learn from them. Once again, we learn from the operating model. How would they set up for scale? How do they connect? Who do they partner with, and try to replicate similar things in this market? From a customer perspective, we looked at customer experience, behaviors, customer centricity as a theme, features and functions. From a UX perspective, UX flows, but I think you get the idea. And then from a commercialization perspective, we looked at adoption, usage, how do they go to market? What were the learnings? What were the pivot points, etc. And all of this is enabled by technology, by some means or the other, whether you're commercializing to digital marketing or doing data analysis or machine learning through AI mechanisms as well. So this just sort of breaks down why it's important to build that puzzle box and those pieces of the puzzle so you are more fit in the market when you build your propositions out. And it shows to your shareholders, it shows to your investors, it shows to the people that entrust you with funding to be able to go out and deliver on the promises of the good that you want to do in the world. So as an example, that translates into, in the fintech world, which is, banks are really crazy and mad around fintechs, 20,000 fintechs across the world, that's 20,000 business models that we can dissect, 100,000 experiences, 200,000 features at our fingertips to be able to learn from, so that when we design our products, we can design them from a gold standard at start. A few other areas just to think about when you look at your propositions. I call it phygital considerations. Often when we take a proposition to market, it's really good to have an authority that dictates the use of your platform. So if a university says that your platform should be used to provide career advice it's a university acting as an authority. Adoption is much quicker and much easier. So this has been sort of one of the key constructs of how we execute our business. Partnerships. I mean, I'm sure you all understand this, but it's about establishing partnerships across the industry to learn from, choosing partners that can bring scale to what you do, negotiating win-win value shares upfront, especially in the NPO space as well. And I always use this analogy in partnerships. You need to look at yourselves as street fighters, and corporates like us are boxers. So when we gel together, when you get a boxer and a street fighter together, obviously it's a very different dynamic. But your need to be a street fighter, to adapt, to move, to be agile, to make quick decisions around pivot points, whatever it may be, is your secret sauce. You don't have to act like a corporate. You just need to find a common value system in your partners that you work with. Well, the fourth industrial revolution is here. We read about it, we know about it, and whereas the last 5 years has been steeped in platform and ecosystem, I believe that the next 5 would really be around IoT devices. I mean, we've already got self-ordering Nespresso machines, vending machines. I've seen washing machines that are going to order detergents on their own and self-ordering, and there's payments behind it. AI, I mean, we all understand this, 3D printing, robotics. So if this fourth industrial revolution is here, what does your business look like in the next 5 years? We were already thinking about it from our perspective. So are you really thinking about it in terms of how you see your business or your organization change over the next little while? And then some hygiene factors. Architecture is really important. When organizations look like corporates, when they look at architecture, they look for robust architectures. And the nice thing is, like, components, like third-party components, technology components that you find out there exist for entrepreneurs and exist for enterprise corporates. A lot of them, every CRM system that's cloud-enabled exists for an entrepreneur to use it cost effectively and for a corporate to use it responsibly at enterprise scale. So really, really look at your architecture when you put it together for your product. Because when you partner with a big organization or you start to get scale, people will look at how you've cobbled your architecture together, what kind of components you've used, why you've used them, and how responsible were you in the use of them, which leads into things like data governance. Like often with cloud, we're sort of asking our partners, where is the data held? Is it held in GDPR compliant cloud locations or non-GDPR compliant cloud locations, which has an impact on POPI and important things from a South African perspective. Cybersecurity, I mean, our cybersecurity teams are probably the busiest teams that you can find, every day pivoting and trying to learn around new things that they need to protect our organization against. So when you partner or when you get large in the nonprofit space, as an example, cybersecurity becomes really important because you may have access to data, confidential information, your business model, your IP. Risk and compliance is another big element of it. And this is in the context of risk assessments and compliance assessment to law, to regulation that sits around the country and across the African continent. And then agility. I think the agility to pivot is really important. So when you build your propositions, please ensure that you have the ability to pivot quickly, with the agility to pivot. To give you an example, when COVID hit, from a Netbank Simply Biz perspective, we were able to, within 2 weeks, create a proposition for crowdfunding for small businesses to raise money from their customers and do good in the market. So these are the things that, that are the learnings that I'm trying to get to, that because our puzzle box was so large to start off with, because we did the groundwork and then to build our propositions, because we knew what gold standard looked like and best of class, things started to fall into place. And the universe will conspire against you to make you, or conspire with you, not against you, to make you successful. I think lastly, this concept of the dartboard. When you build your value propositions, really ask yourself, how close to the bullseye are we? And your propositions that you have will contain many constituent parts. Like, from an example, in a banking perspective, we sell airtime. That may be a commodity, it'll sit to the outer rings of the bullseye. But at the killer offering, like some of the ones that we have, where we deliver on this promise of convenience, speed, or price, and from your perspective, there may be some other factors, really question yourself on how close are you, because that is a function of your ability to scale. So I've covered a number of topics around technology in the context of enabling business models, in the context of enabling strategies that you have. This mechanism of a gold standard of your fitness is everything that feeds into your ability to be resilient and survive things like COVID, and being able to understand the market, have the partnerships, have the enablers to leverage so that you can be successful, or give yourself the highest chance of being successful, and to attract investments and to attract growth. So I wish you well on your journeys, and this is just a quick tour of some lessons that we've learned.
Thanks, Fernellen. That was really great to get an insight from you from a more corporate perspective. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to introduce our judging panel. Fernellen was a judge. He was our fourth judge. He looked into the question on technology. As applicants, you'll all know that there were two categories of awards. There was the main award, which was which is up for MPOs who could demonstrate their resilience and innovation during this lockdown period and in the context of COVID-19. That amount is, I'm sure I don't need to be reminded, is for 600,000 Rand. And there is a second category, which was for MPOs who could show that how they had used technology in being in their response and in being kind of innovative in response to the crisis. And that amount is for an amount of 400,000 Rand. And our judges will be announcing, our panel of judges will come on and speak in turn, and they will be announcing winners of those awards. Let me just introduce them firstly. So you've obviously heard from Fernellen. He looked in, as I said, on the technology applicants. And then we had Kathy Masters, who is a qualified CA and founder of Zeo, which is a specialized financial management consultancy for nonprofit organizations. Kathy's worked with nonprofit organizations since 1987, and she's worked with a range of diverse organizations, from small community-based organizations right up to international funding organizations. And so she really has good understanding of the sector, and particularly from a financial resilience perspective. Then our second judge is Ferial Domingo. She is operations manager at Untitled, which is an organization that works to sustain and strengthen civil society organizations and grow local philanthropy. She's got qualifications in public relations, corporate governance and citizenship, and management studies at UCT. And also has, I think, at least 2 or 3 decades of experience in the sector. Then we have Sandiso Sabisi, who is the founder of COOI Studios, which is an open innovation advisory and lab for corporates, and aims to bridge the gap between innovative products developed by startups and corporations wanting to solve their business problems using design thinking. She has in the past served as the head of Innovation Africa, Open Innovation for Africa at Accenture, and also has a lot of experience, particularly in the startup sector and small business sector. So those are our 3 judges. They collectively, as I'm sure you can see, would agree, have a lot of experience. And then just to give you a short insight into the process, what we did was, as you know, the applications were judged solely on, the entries were judged solely on the application forms, and all MPOs were able to submit evidence to support their applications, which many of you did, and really made it a lot easier to judge. Trialogue did a first initial shortlisting. We received almost 150 applications, so we were really pleased with that response. And we did initial shortlisting. We shortlisted down to 10 organizations in each category. And we did this using a marking rubric, which within, we handed those names over to the judges. The judges then did their own judging, and then we got together and we had 2 kind of long sessions where we had a lot of robust debates about who should be the winners, and we reached consensus on the winners and some runners-up who will also be mentioned by the judges. So I'm going to hand over to Kathy, who's going to give us some of her reflections on the process and talk about some of the entries. And then we'll hear from Sandiso, who will do the same and also announce the Technology Award winner. And then lastly, Ferial will come in and announce the main award winner. So over to you, Kathy.
Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca. It's really a privilege for me to be here today, and I want to thank Trilog and Nedbank Private Wealth for inviting me to be a judge on these awards. But I want to particularly thank all the organizations that took the time and the trouble to apply. We as judges only got to review the top 10 shortlisted in each category, but I was truly blown away by how organizations responded in a time of crisis. So I want to share with you some of the interesting things that I learned from reading through the applications, reading through the evidence, to help us to understand what enabled these organizations. And I'm sure there are many out there who didn't have the time to apply and have similarly not only survived, but have also thrived through the crisis. And what is very interesting is to see some of the common themes that supported the resilience and innovative actions that were explained in these applications. There were a few applications that particularly stood out for me, and these were the ones that not only told the good story and answered the questions in the application form, but also provided great supporting evidence of their resilience and/or innovation. For me, it is so important not only to be able to speak or write passionately about your organization and its work, but also to be able to show its strength and impact. Not all applicants, for example, provided the annual financial statements of the organization, which is really one of the most important public documents that your organization has. Those financial statements tell a story about your financial resilience and your sustainability. And it was disappointing for me that some excellent applications could not be considered as winners because we could not assess that. And for some that did share the annual financial statements, there were some that didn't have really sufficient information in those statements around things like the sources of their funding and their sustainability. And I really just want to take this moment to really encourage you to consider your annual financial statements as a great public relations document, one of the most important, and really encourage you to share your sources of funding because it speaks to diversity of funding. It's also important to speak to your strategy around sustainability. Speak to how you build up reserves and build those reserves to a level which enables you to ride that storm. When funding may be held up for whatever reason, that you actually have something in reserve to enable you to continue and to be sustainable. Some also referred in their plans to the building of reserves, but if they didn't have practical evidence, it's not good enough just to speak to the intention to do that, but also to actually do it. Another example that not all applicants provided sufficient information about was their board and their staff members. It really helps if one had shared, and I think this is another important when you're sharing your proposals with funders and so on, is to speak to your strengths as an organization and to demonstrate that by sharing the names of your board members, your staff members, and their strengths or otherwise. So having said that, I want to speak to what the common themes that ran across the applications. The first one of that struck me was strong leadership, quick and innovative decision-making. Now I'd call it fearlessness, willingness to take risk. But what was super interesting for me is that they stayed within their sphere of work. So organizations that were in education stayed within education. Those that were involved in advocacy for children's rights, for example, stayed within that area of work. So the innovation and resilience that truly impressed me was those that could innovate in line with the vision and mission of the organization to directly benefit and achieve the impact that they already in the beginning had intended to achieve, but simply found other avenues and tools in which to do that. Really, really impressive. And I'll share with you some examples in a moment. The second common theme was strong relationships. And I think some of the other judges will also mention this as well. Strong trust, strong commitment on the board and staff members and donors, and even with beneficiaries, which led to strong collaboration and the ability to act fast. So a great team on the board, great team of innovative, dedicated, committed staff members, and even beneficiaries who were drawn together to be able to make things happen. And yeah, I can't, it's really, I've known this all along, of course, we've all known it, but when a crisis really hits, it's the existing relationships that you have that you draw on. So yeah, really excellent. And again, one of the other judges will also comment on some examples of this. Also, what was really good is to see the redirecting of efforts and existing resources, and at the same time, identifying and unlocking new resources quickly through technology, but also through the existing relationships that they have. Then the obvious other one was the embracing of the available technologies and to build on these tech platforms. The COVID crisis pushed us all into a completely new way of working. And I think that little video that Viola shared with us really struck home to us, even at Zio, where we work. We've been talking for a long time about going, doing online training and getting our systems onto the cloud and so on and so forth. And it was really the COVID crisis that pushed us, and many of the applicants and many of you as well, I'm sure, pushed us into the technological space and the digital space quicker than we'd ever thought was possible, and at less cost, interestingly, as well. And then the final point that I want to really emphasize, and then I will draw on some examples from the applicants, was strong partnerships. Partnerships with other NGOs, with government, with suppliers, with businesses, with school. This really struck me. There were several cases of new and unusual partnerships, particularly with suppliers and businesses. So I think often we think of ourselves in the NGO space, we'll work with government, we'll work with funders, we'll work with other NGOs, but do we work with our suppliers? And this has been quite an interesting thing to see as we've read through the applications. So let me just tell you a little bit about some of the applications that we received in no particular order. But one of them I wanted to share with you about is the Food and Trees for Africa NPC, or FTA. Their core mission is to contribute to food security, environmental sustainability, natural resource management, and sustainability in South Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. During 2020, they launched the Grow Your Own initiative, a seed and seedling distribution program. It went on to deliver 1.2 million seedlings to over 800 beneficiary projects over the lockdown period. They created partnerships with their suppliers and fast-tracked development of bulk ordering and distribution systems with tech stakeholders. And they developed systems to be able to process data on a large scale. I think there's many lessons there for us to learn from FTA. And their quote that I want to bring to you is, collaboration with various suppliers and stakeholders is pivotal. And secondly, I'd like to talk about the Jumpstart Foundation. And they supported this view. They are quoted to say, we need to collaborate to achieve impact. They also stated financial resilience isn't only about money in the bank. Built up over time, it hinges on strong systems, internal culture, solid relationships with funders, diversification and investment in fundraising, even when things are great. Jumpstart Foundation Trust works largely in education, creating centers of maths, robotic, and coding excellence in underperforming schools while training unemployed youths as maths tutors or interns, preparing them for the world of work. Jumpstart collaborates with government, private sector, peer NGOs, academics, donors, and think tanks. This places them in a strong position to respond in collaboration with its interns and staff through strong existing partnerships. So this is an emphasis here, existing partnerships. The strong commitment of interns to you and the use of tech enabled the program to continue to support learners and the interns themselves. Jumpstart advisors experiment with free tech tools. A simple Android device is suitable. Similarly, Olico Maths Education, another one of our shortlisted applicants, found that using WhatsApp for their tutors, they could stay in touch with students and learners after hours, coining the phrase just-in-time tutor, just-in-time tutor, drawing on the underlying passion and commitment of the tutors and the learners. Super impressive. And then the Center for Advancement in Science and Maths Education, they referred to a minimal viable product, running with it and refining it along the way, applying a blended learning approach, resulting in reduced cost and extended reach. I want to repeat that, reduced cost and extended reach. This is also something that we found quite common across the applicants. I'd like to mention Sozo Foundation is working in advocacy around disability issues. They also stated collaboration, partnership, and common purpose. I emphasize that common purpose become tools of the future. Breadline Africa also stated our collaborative partnership arrangements amplify our impact. The Ezra Community Training and Development MPC said, great governance, but flexible planning and excellent partner relationships are key. The Carl du Toit Trust has a vision, a world where children who are deaf have universal access to hearing technology and spoken language through ensuring the financial sustainability of all Carl du Toit centers and preserving the methodology. The trust and centers also work to sensitize broader community to deafness, health, hearing health. And they said, we confirmed through their experience during COVID and ongoingly, we confirmed that it takes a village to raise a child. Our links into the community are strong. Our parents are absolute stars who adapted with us to the change for the benefit of the children. Give a Child a Family also stepped up to provide food and basic needs relief to families, very much in line with their organizational vision and mission. They stressed the importance of maintaining human dignity and considering the specific needs of the family. They used tech solution, Kobo, to collect data and information about their families and their specific needs, and collaborated with ShopRite and CompuTicket for enabling the distribution of vouchers, enabling the families to purchase what they needed while retaining dignity. The Sozo Foundation is also an organization that similarly listened to community needs and worked collaboratively. They are based in a poor disadvantaged community of Vrygrond, and they applied a holistic approach, sharing great lessons about reputation, staff, board, and visibility in the community. They also implemented an automated application and ordering system, applying what they're referring to as an inclusive paradigm. Some great lessons there to learn, I think, as well. The Phoenix Trust offers a crowdfunding platform linking students with donors, so students enabling the students to study debt-free. During COVID crisis, it launched the Cap the Gap campaign and raised 3.4 million Rand through crowdfunding and use nationally recognized networks to distribute computers, laptops, vouchers for food and data directly to cell phones to their final year and postgraduate students. Great innovation and great learnings for all of us that need to distribute to a wider group. This is common across many of the applications as well. Jake's Kerrville Fellowship impressively developed an online assessment methodology and a great capacity for large online events. They learned to over-communicate. They learned that mental health is extremely important, very important to show gratitude, and that tech is pivotal for growth. Far from limiting their work, their online methodologies have expanded their reach and the quality of their work as they work with students. And then Book Dash is a social impact publisher of new African children's books. They were excited to find a viable solution, an alternative to a physical event. And that resulted in more reach, more participation, and more creativity. They also created a concept, or described a concept, of considered distribution, stating that your work will have more impact if your distribution partners are sustainable, resilient, and innovative. Another interesting phrase from their application that I picked up on is the concept of organized conversation for best practice. I think this is super interesting. It was also incredibly impressive, the very lean budget that Book Dash is operating on with only 3 staff, but yet having built up savings and reserves to cover for 6 years of operations. So well done, Book Dash. Then I also want to comment on the Witkoppen Clinic, who stressed communication, as well as the need for creating multiple financial scenarios and impact analysis. Pray Collect organization, who you may know of, working in health advocacy around the world and specifically in South Africa in this context, their comment, which I'll end with, the key to resilience is trustworthy information, trustworthy partners and sources. So you can see we had some excellent applications, and it really was a privilege to read through all of those applications and to consider them and to discuss and debate them amongst ourselves. And before I finish my little section here, I want to also say that we will be, there's a NPO collaboration dialogue event coming up on the 6th of May, and we are going to be inviting the winners and some of the applicants and finalists to be on a panel to discuss and to answer some questions around the innovation and the things that they've learned through this time. So we're hoping that you'll be able to join with us on that event as well. Thank you, Rebecca, and I hope I haven't overrun my time. And we look forward to hearing who the winners are going to be. Thank you.
Effie, thanks so much for those really insightful reflections. And yeah, I'd just like to encourage everyone, if you have any questions, to please post them in the Q&A box as we go along. So I'm going to invite Sandiso to chat or to give us her reflections from the process, and to also, she will be announcing the winner of the technology category award. So thanks, Sandiso.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I'm sorry you can see my pantry behind me this morning. I was just making a coffee. So I want to greet everyone that's on the call. Thank you for taking the time to come listen to the finalists and to also listen to who the winners are. I want to obviously thank each and every applicant for applying. I run a small business, so I know how much time it takes to just stop what you're doing, stop operations, and actually apply to these programs. So I do want to applaud you for applying. Firstly, I want to start off by thanking Netbank in just like appointing me to be one of the judges. I was one of the younger persons on the panel. So if you are in doubt about diversity, I think they tick the box. I'm definitely under the age of 35, and I'm a female entrepreneur. And it was very evident also in just the scoring when we compared each other's scorings, that I came from a very different perspective, looking at it in a different lens, so very different. So there was definitely, I'd say it was definitely a fair process in terms of just having different lenses, different views, and looking at different aspects of each applicant. So I just want to thank Trilog and Nedbank for selecting me to be part of the judging panel. It was lots of debate. I definitely fought for the young people. So if you ever doubted, like if you're not represented, I definitely did represent young people on this competition. And just an overall perspective from my side. So I just learned a lot about just rapid response, just needs to be part of a business DNA, and if one fails or if a business fails, to actually have that rapid response perspective, they actually will not survive in the market going forward. I don't think that COVID-19 is the last pandemic we are going to face. I strongly suspect that we are going to see more of these when the world is shutting down for various pandemics, various crises. So I think having a rapid response, agility as part of your DNA is going to be ultra important for your business to survive. And I saw a lot of that happening around with the applicants. And then just reading the applicants as well, what I thought was pretty interesting is I saw a shift towards beneficiary centricity. So we often in technology innovation, we speak about customer centricity, but in this case, because it's an NGO space, we saw beneficiary centricity. So which means that there was definitely a focus around what beneficiaries need and not looking at them as a mass population or a group, but rather actually focusing on specific individual needs. And we saw that with the child, I've actually forgot the name now, if the judges can remind me, but give a child a family. We saw that, they went to the extent of actually partnering with ShopRite, and then they beneficiaries specifically filling in a form to actually, or a digital form, obviously, to say what they actually need. Often we see NGOs, when they deliver goods to a family, it's a mass pack that is just, there's been a general assumption as to what each family needs. And sometimes they actually don't need the stuff that they're given, and that becomes wastage. So I saw a shift in that, and I think that shift is actually going to give NGOs cost savings in the future, and also just a reduction in wastage. So I think that was quite important. I mean, in our space, when we speak about customer centricity or beneficiary centricity, we're usually referring to it in the financial services space. We speak about something about hyper-personalization. So I saw that shift in the NGO space, which is quite exciting for me to see coming across. Also, what was evident, I must say, definitely the younger organizations definitely stretched themselves. A lot of them took on the responsibility of developing new products, which one of the ones that come to mind is Phoenix Trust. Jake's Travel Fellowship demonstrated just the resilience and just the out-of-the-box thinking. And I used to have an NGO, so I know that going in a different direction to what you promise your board is like a bit administrative intensive. You need to get permission. And so just asking and believing that they would say yes and trying something different that may or may not work out, right? So I think the risk taking, was very evident amongst the young organizations. So I want to just applaud you for that and taking that risk, because in many cases, they were actually quite successful. And just, I guess I saw also just a shift in not only going towards technology tools like collaboration tools like Zoom, Google Meet, Google Chat, but I saw just the adoption of deeper technologies. So being able to run your workshops, on a call, using boards, using all various technologies to actually enable you. So I saw just the shift around technology adoption, and I hope that will grow going forward as well. And then just, I guess for me overall, and I want to just land here, it's just that I was really, really impressed by how the NGO sector has changed. And also, I think the support from other external organizations, such as the telcos, actually zero rating a lot of the work that the NGOs were doing is actually something noble. And I think that's going to really change trajectory in terms of technology adoption, because part of the reason is if our beneficiaries don't have access to a smartphone, don't have access to data, therefore they can't access our services if we use digital technology. But if the telcos are willing to zero rate NGO type of apps, then we are able to reach that mass, and that's quite exciting for me. So I just want to thank all the applicants that applied, especially the young organizations. I'm very impressed, and I hope you continue to flourish and to do even greater work. So I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Sandisa, you're missing an important part of what you're going to announce for us, the winners of the Technology Award.
Drum roll. This was, like I must say, this was not an easy one to pick. I think there were lots of great applicants, and so I want to thank everyone again. I know we can't let everyone win, obviously. But the winner is the Phoenix Trust won the Technology Award. So congratulations to you.
Oh, congratulations to the Phoenix Trust. I've just turned on the microphone for Melissa, and let me just promote her to a panelist. She is representing the Phoenix Trust, so if you'd like to say a few words, Melissa.
Morning, Rebecca. Our CEO, Liana de Beer, is actually on the call as well this morning. So Great. I'll leave it to say a few words on our behalf.
Great, welcome, thanks.
Thank you, Melissa. Wow, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. I just want to say, first of all, I want to apologize. I'm sitting next to the reservoir in Cape Town where all the helicopters are picking up water for the fire. So it's incredibly noisy in my background. So I apologize for that. Thank you so very much for the award. Netbank Private Wealth as well as Trilog, it's incredible that you promote and celebrate the work that NGOs are doing in this country. I think, with everything happening in our country, even just the UCT fires yesterday, we see the power of community and we see the importance of people coming together. And, you strengthening our passion and our resolve. And I want to really just thank you for that. I think when COVID happened, we were all really, really freaked out, and there was a lot of anxiety and stress, not just for the beneficiaries, but for our internal teams as well. And how do you navigate all of these unknowns? And I think coming back to the helicopter now, apologize for that. Coming back to what some of the guest speakers and panelists said here today, is just focusing on your strengths. And going back to partners and also having an incredible board of trustees that allow us to push the envelope within the regulations and rules of operating as a PBO, but really allowing us to test and try and fail, and always having our backs. I'd love to share more. I don't know how much time I have, but I will definitely be part of the panel on the 6th of May, I think, and happy to share any of our learnings with the rest of you. I also just want to say to everyone else, there's incredible organizations here today, and your work that you've done last year needs to be celebrated, and I salute you for doing such incredible work. We all, the one organization winning is a winning for all, because it means we're all moving forward. So thank you very much for the award. It's so much appreciated.
Fantastic. And I wonder if you would like to just maybe talk about, just give us a little bit of a flavor as to what you entered. You entered the Cap the Gap campaign, and you managed to raise, 3.4 million for over 400 students for that. And I wonder if you just give us a little quick summary of that.
Absolutely, thank you, Rebecca. So we're in the tertiary education space. We work with public university students, and when lockdown happened, many of you know the universities were also closed down, and our students were sent home. Many students do not have access to digital resources at home, so that digital divide became very clear during COVID. And I think a lot of us were able to survived COVID due to our ability to be online, due to our ability to watch TV, connect with friends and family, because we had unlimited data as well as devices. So it became very apparent that that was a connection tool, but it was also a tool to check in with people, and many students didn't have that. During that time, we were also lucky because we just finished research with our students, and realized that there was a very big digital divide. So we, like I said, rallied, and we are platform business, but we realized that we needed to create a new platform because our old platform, or the current platform, was quite complex. We needed to respond rapidly and quickly. So we tried to focus on our strengths, and that was really being agile and being used to changing a lot and chaos, as well as using technology to our aid. And then trying to find partners that aligned with us. So it was very grassroots. We tried to tap into our networks and phone and connect to anyone possibly that could support and help. And we were able to raise 3.4 million Rand with the support of a great community of funders. But more importantly, we had to make sure that we were able to distribute it. So raising the money, collecting the money was one thing, but we need to make sure that we are able, within a quick turnaround, disperse that funding and make sure that that money ended where it was intended. So that became almost a priority. And we created a second bank account to ring fence the funding very quickly and to make sure that we don't mix it with any of our general funding. So that was one of the first things we did. And then we convinced one of our donors to give us a little bit of money towards that spend, which helped a lot. We were able to then very quickly sign partnership agreements with Van Schaik's bookstore, which is has a national footprint and knows students really well. And what they were able to help us with is to make sure that the right student got the computer, the right student got the data, so that it didn't land in the wrong hands. And that it was as close to the we also now, students were home, not on campus, so we need to find bookstores closest to the students' home addresses. So we did a lot of on the ground through our ambassador network, through our student network, used them as little foot soldiers and made sure that we could confirm where students stayed and lived. And we were able to disperse data and food vouchers through SMS and WhatsApp, which was great, as well as then use Van Schaik's to deliver devices. And then wrap the devices so that students can take it home safely without running into trouble. So there was lots of little things that we had to consider. And we ultimately, I think, did that by having a great team that was willing to test and fail and just go for it. I remember when I had the conversation with our team, when we decided we're going to do the Cap the Gap campaign, you have never done it. We've never done relief work. We kind of, our fundraising cycles are longer, our disbursement cycles are longer. So we said to the team, hey, this is going to show how innovative we are if we really want to say that we are an innovative company. So we were just like, and we're going to make mistakes and fail, but that's okay. We have each other's backs. And then we got the support of our trustees. And then we built the platform, built the networks, launched and started fundraising within 6 weeks, and immediately started dispersing within a couple of weeks of raising our first capital. And we disperse monthly to also help students manage their income and cash flow. So not giving a student all of it at once, but give them monthly food vouchers and monthly data so that you could help them manage that as well. And we dispersed our last of all of that money that we raised in February of this year. So I think a successful campaign all in all.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing that. Yeah. I mean, you really spoke to all the strengths that we picked up in your application, tapping into strong networks, and really just thinking of the problem from all angles and demonstrating such a deep understanding of student needs. Great. So I'm going to hand over to Ferial, who was...
Yes. I forgot the other part was around the second and third place. I should have also mentioned that. Do you mind if we read that?
Sure.
Yes, of course.
I don't have them in front of me. If you can please just check. Thanks.
Okay, great. Let me just get that up. Yeah, so we did want to, although there is no prize money for runners-up, we did really want to acknowledge, organizations that had come close, because these entries were all really close. And so we thought it right to mention, the few top contenders, and would also like to send you a certificate as well in the post, which you can look out for. But in no order and deserving of a special mention were the Give a Child a Family organization, the Jakes Gavo Fellowship, the Jumpstart Foundation Trust, the Alico Maths and Education Center, and precult.org. We're all among our top contenders. So well done to you as well. Thanks for that, Sandeep. Great. I'm going to pass across to Ferial, who is going to speak to the reflections and the winners announce the winner of the main award as well. Thanks, Ferial.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So good morning, everyone. Pretty exciting, much like my fellow panelist mentioned. It's pretty exciting. But before I go, I do want to acknowledge, Sandiso just made sure that she noted her youth and how much younger she is compared to Kathy and I. And so I just want to make sure that we acknowledge you again, Sandiso. Okay, so as I said, it was indeed a real privilege, an honor to have served as a panel judge on this very prestigious award. And I would also like to commend Nedbank Private Wealth for this timely, and I say timely because, 12 or 14 months into COVID, we're still not seeing the light. And this is such an exciting initiative, and it will provide organizations who are the winners of the 2 awards an opportunity to really expand on some ideas and creativity that they have tested and that we are now acknowledging today. So we're all very much aware of the huge challenges that organizations face to secure core funding. And when I say core funding, we're talking about, the lack of operational expense coverage, or even just to fund the kind of research and development that we would all like to do in order for us to come up and show up better and create the kind of change that we developed and stand for as organizations. And then not to mention this testing of innovative ideas. Where's the money coming from? We hardly have money to pay salaries and cover 100% of salaries these days. So certainly the awards has come at a very timely time. I'm also pleased when Balewa spoke and Knox also spoke earlier on, that they speak about greater risk-taking. I feel that will definitely enable innovation. So I'm very happy to hear, the direction that things are taking with philanthropy. During the pandemic, we've noted that organizations have been busy responding, reinventing, reconfiguring, hours and hours and days planning and strategizing on how to maintain a level of business continuity so that the reason we exist, which is the beneficiaries that we serve, doesn't suffer because of a lack of or a break in service or decline in interventions and support that we, exist for. And then when we speak about the creativity and the innovation, and then I mentioned that Violan spoke about how he spends his day reviewing and exploring 2 platforms every day. The sector would love to be able to do that. And so, it's not because we don't have the interest, it's just that the way that we have designed our work and the efforts in order to make those kind of changes, we don't have the luxury of these pockets of funding that's sitting to either bring in consultants or upskill our team who are largely programmatic staff and to an extent administration, because we also do a lot of monitoring and evaluation as organizations. And so, of course, it does require very special skill sets as well, So a lot of us have explored on the general platforms, which is about WhatsApp, Google Meet, Hangout, and there's a host of others. There's also, I want to mention this, there has not been much time to cultivate new relationships Organizations also found it very challenging during this time to reach donors. I mean, donors have been inundated and their funding have also declined because they have had to, unfortunately, redirect their funding towards food relief, provision of PPE for frontline workers, very much a need. And so, you know, it was really very hard for us as organizations to find the donors. As you've heard Kathy and Sandiso talk about the specifics of the entries which we reviewed as judges, my perspectives are pretty much in line with theirs. The panel of judges deliberated quite a bit before decision was reached. There was a bit of toing and froing. In addition to the long meetings that we had, we also had email exchanges and phone calls, etc. And I can confirm, much like my two colleagues have said, that we certainly applied robustness in the deliberations, and we applied a diverse lens. I'm reminded by Sandisa, of course, you know, the youthfulness and the youthful perspectives, etc. Sandisa will pick that up with you later. And each of us and our backgrounds and knowledge and skills, it was applied in order to tease out the merits of each application. So as Kathy mentioned, we reviewed 20 applications out of plus minus 150 mentioned by Rebecca and Knox. And we therefore, I want to say that though we were only able to see the 20, it was hugely inspiring. And I also have huge respect and I'm humbled by the display of resilience and innovation presented by the applications. And so it was very exciting. I must tell you, it was exciting. It was long hours, many nights, but it was very exciting and uplifting. And so I want to thank you for fulfilling my, you know, for fulfilling that interest that I always have about the sector and to see how things are shaping. The level of creativity and innovation that emerged almost overnight in some cases, at a time when funding was being redirected, as I mentioned earlier on, is very, very exciting and humbling. I was encouraged by the innovative ideas and measures by leadership of organizations. Some of you have mentioned it, particularly Phoenix now, when she made her acceptance speech. And we talk about governing bodies here as well, to secure jobs and sustain livelihoods for as long as possible. I mean, that must have been a very difficult thing to do, you know, given that the funding is just declining, there's no new money coming in. What do? You're in a bit of a conundrum. So we often talk about people being the biggest asset of the organization until we are faced with a crucial decision, which is mainly as a result of inadequate financial resources. What do? How do you sleep? You have to make these difficult decisions. Some good storytelling, though, came through in the applications. Storytelling, we know, is part of the solicitation component in the fundraising cycle. And so the principle of knowing and understanding the work of the organization and where it is heading before you put pen to paper is crucial. If someone's going to read your story, it has to be a compelling story. I would also like to mention that quite a few applications did not have sufficient documentation, as Kathy mentioned as well, and evidence to justify the claims and statements made. Very, very important. So please, you know, I would encourage you to really pay attention to that. You can appreciate that when one is reviewing a mountain of proposals, and in this case, applications, the information must be available and forthcoming. Otherwise, it becomes too onerous on the panel of judges or even the reader when you are submitting your proposal to a donor. If we must make more time available to do a search, it's going to go on a separate pile and you'll work with, you know, whoever provided all the information. So some great examples of resilience and innovation noted in the applications. I'll mention a few. Going above and beyond, these are what we picked up, going above and beyond to consider the need of the family, not only the child. Students affected by the lack of technology went all out to ensure IT hardware is made available. and reached the student in a timely manner. Totally pivoting from face-to-face to online, developing online event systems, something they'd not done before, exploring the viability of virtual versus physical, meant a wider reach of participation and more creativity and partnerships. Diversifying the resource mobilization strategy. Through this, they raised a tremendous amount of funds through digital fundraising. Some of us hadn't done that before. Explosive partnerships, expanding reach and impact, new partnership development, a lot of that came through. Robust board engagement, good policies and procedures that were in place, or there was mention of it, and in some cases, evidence provided. Blended learning, which moved to a blended learning approach, which impacted on reduced costs and extended reach. I really like that this applicant just went ahead, ran with it, with the hope to refine, and they went along and said, well, we'll move things as we go along, but we need to do this, let's just go. And they were successful. We note that the organizations were putting in their best efforts to diversify their resource mobilization strategies. And as I mentioned, to shift to a digital fundraising in the fundraising and resource mobilization became very, very critical. We know that the key to sustainable fundraising is cultivation and relationship building. Applicants mentioned that they had to find a way to keep going despite the challenges of not being able to make personal contact. And I think we all, found that lack of personal contact to be probably one of our biggest challenges. What came through, though, is how engaging boards were during this period. They stepped up to find solutions and to create flexible environment with the paid staff. That was very impressive. Applicants reflected the successes achieved because of the board engaging more purposefully. Resilient organizations have boards in place who clearly understand their fiduciary duties, roles, and responsibilities, who provide the insight and foresight to move the mission forward. So if you have the evidence that this is happening in your organization, please write about it in your next proposal. We were encouraged by the mention of policies and procedures in quite a few of the applications, actually, recognizing that good up-to-date policies, no good to have a set of policies that's 25 years old and you've not shifted. So mention that it's good, it's up-to-date, and it shows that an organization is committed to accountability, which is, a very important point before one hands over your financial resources to an organization. You want to know that they understand the issue of accountability. And so several applicants put the well-being of the staff first, very exciting. In a few cases, staff salaries were secured. Others, unfortunately, had to retrench and take salary cuts. Organizations also wrote about transitioning into digital mode, something that they have planned in the longer term. And now suddenly they found actually it wasn't so difficult. Maybe they had a few younger people there. They made it work. So adapting accounting systems into the cloud, moving quickly into Office 365, and staff adjusting to teleworking. Oh my word, that was a mission. Everybody thought that they didn't want to, until they actually got it going. And so your application, some of you did speak about how easy that was. But you also mentioned that you made sure that there was good training, that there was good support, that there was good check-in mechanisms. And that, I think, was also critical to the success of the transition. And so I've mentioned all what we've picked up, in terms of the operations lens of the applications. I would now like to just mention a few of the top five applicants that we feel came through as the most solid in terms of the lens that we applied in the Nedbank Private Wealth Awards for Resilience and Innovation. And again, it isn't in any particular order. So the Sozo Foundation, they work with youth of Vrygrond. Vrygrond is a community along the Cape Flats, who are equipped and empowered to live with dignity, purpose, and hope by creating pathways to employment through a heart of unconditional love. So a lot of care. And enabling youth employability through a heart of unconditional love. Again. Education, skills development, and social enterprise. The next one in the top 5 was Book Dash, a social impact publisher of new African children's books. They believe that every child should own 100 books by the age of 5. That's a big mission. Jumpstart Foundation Trust, Kathy mentioned already in detail. They accelerate South African youth into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths by creating centers of math, robotics, and coding excellence in underperforming school. The next one is the Phoenix Trust. I think we know a little bit about them now. They connect communities in an innovative way to achieve debt-free education. And then there's Give a Child a Family, also came up here in the top 5. They're a hub of support and a resource for children, families, communities, and civil society in KwaZulu-Natal. Then the last one in our top 5 is the Jakes Gerwel Fellowship. They run a full university scholarship, providing extensive mentoring and leadership development for top learners with a passion for teaching and education. So that was the top 5. As I said, we spent a lot of time deliberating on the top 5. I will now move to announce the winner of the Nedbank Private Wealth Innovation Award in Resilience and Innovation. This award is in recognition of an organization that have adapted to thrive in difficult times and from whom others can draw inspiration, we feel. So if you can just allow me to do the proper thing and do, if you can hear this, the drum roll.
Thank you.
Right, and the winner is Book Dash. Right.
Congratulations, Book Dash.
Congratulations, Book Dash. I want to just tell you why Book Dash, if you don't mind.
Yes, please, Ferriel.
So Book Dash is, as I said, a social impact publisher of new African children's books aimed at children under 5 and the adults who care for them. These are children who would never otherwise own books and therefore share the tangible benefits of book ownership. They have published 146 new open license books so far and translated them into the official South African languages. The judges based its decision on the following merits. The storytelling throughout the application, we found it believable and inspiring, and that's very important. The developing of local children's books within 12 hours. They talk about an event of 12 hours. It was before, it was on a Saturday, face-to-face. Now, of course, they've transitioned to virtual. Their goal is that each child should own books, as I said, as many books as possible. They've mentioned 100. But you know what? This was backed up by great evidence. They proved how cost-effective it was. They utilized the power of creative volunteers, professional writers, illustrators, designers, and editors at the Book Dash event. It is usually a one-day event working with teams. They spoke about a small, lean and mean team, 3 people who manages about a reach of about 1 million books. This really spoke about the resilience of the staff. They talked about consulting with external expertise when needed. During the pandemic, the team worked efficiently from home, but the organization also invested in tools and training to ensure communication and project management channels are maintained. And then they also mentioned that it's a youth-led organization. They speak about developing effective systems and processes so that access is provided. For instance, they speak about zero-rated, data-free repository with about 500 plus new African storybooks. They talked about systems documentation and project management tools that was developed for NPOs specifically. So it was a very targeted development. They spoke about a robust risk assessment that happened at the beginning of the pandemic. And so this shifted them to direct communication with funding partners, distribution partners, and their ecosystem partners to assess their risks. And based on this, they were then able to develop the solutions that they jumped on and got to do very quickly. They developed a culture of innovation to effect positive social change. This was their big goal in redirecting the work that they wanted to do. They also had, in the new way of doing things, expanded on international exposure and experience. They were very innovative, resilient and sustainable, or they had very innovative, resilient and sustainable distribution partners. They also mentioned the notion of collaborative printing, which allowed their partners to pool funds to drive down the cost of printing for all. So there was a huge cost saving there. And Kathy spoke about the lean annual budget and the savings and the reserve, in this case, 6 years of the reserves that was built up in a very short space of time, shifting from a physical to a virtual event that resulted in a wider reach, more participation, and certainly more and increased creativity. This improved they're constantly seeking to improve the status quo to increase book ownership for children. And as I said, great impact and shared learnings here. This was backed up by evidence provided. So they attached the following evidence: annual financial statements, a distribution map, so we could see where their distribution channels were. A virtual event video was shared with us. They also shared a book manual. It's actually an open source document that anyone can consult when they want to plan a bookmaking event, which is obviously going to be inspired by the book methodology. The manual has been updated to incorporate the methodology for virtual events as well, meaning that the virtual events are also replicable. So I'm sure if you go to their website, you'll be able to find this information. And then there is, of course, some other material which they provided, which I think Rebecca is going to play just now for you. And then to quote Bolelwa at the opening, let's celebrate the winner of this award, is what she said, or rather of these awards. And before we end, Rebecca will show a short clip to demonstrate their work. Rebecca, if you've been able to get that clip going, cool. If not, I can always try from my end.
Great. Thanks, Ferial. Thanks so much for that and for providing that detail around the winners. So I think what I'd like to do is first invite Book Dash just to talk to us and to acknowledge the award. I'm going to invite Dorette. I just want to make sure we have enough time to ask a few Q&A before I play the video. So I'll first get Dorette from Book Dash to talk.
Perfect.
Okay. Bumping you up to a panelist, Dorette. So you should be able to switch on your camera. So there's a lot of pressure to get the technology right for an innovation award. There she is. Thank you. Hi, Dorette. Thank you. Congratulations.
Hi. Sure. Thank you very much. I'm feeling very hot in the face and so excited, and I've already shared this on WhatsApp with my whole team. It's fantastic. I mean, we are absolutely overjoyed, and we are so humbled at being recognized for being resilient and sustainable, and for the innovation that I think underlies the whole organization. And I can say that because I wasn't around when the organization was founded. So I can absolutely, as someone who came in a few years ago, really applaud the innovative kind of foundation that Book Dash has always had. So we are absolutely thrilled, especially after having heard the quality and the amazing impact of the rest of the shortlist. To then be announced as the winners, I think is just really, I've got goosebumps, and I think we are, yeah, as I say, incredibly humbled. And thank you so much to Nedbank, to the judges who obviously took a lot of time to look at our applications in great detail. The fact that you sat through all our videos that we submitted and scrutinized the annual financial statements of all 20 shortlisted organizations, I think speaks to the integrity of this award, and we are, yeah, so glad. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dorette, and congratulations again. I'm going to ask.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We don't have too many questions on the Q&A box, and a number of them have been answered. So there is a bit of time. What I'm going to do is ask my colleague Kumo to play a wonderful clip that Book Dash submitted as part of the application, which was so helpful for us in getting a sense of what they do. So Kumo, I'm gonna ask you to play that, and we'll hope that technology does its part. Kumo, I think you need to enable the sound. I think the sound is not playing on the video, if it's not just me. No,
it's not playing.
No, it's not playing. Apologies for that. Thanks, Kumo. I don't know if you're able to fix it quickly or if maybe we should move on.
Apologies, everyone. I have no idea why.
All right, that's a pity. So apologies for that. And I would really encourage all of you to go and have a look at the Book Dash website. I do think it is available on their website. It could be corrected, but I do think it is.
Yes, it is.
Website. It is great. So please, if you are interested in what they do, head over to the website and have a look. Otherwise, I would like to, I mean, there were a few questions. The idea was that we would have a bit of a Q&A session, and most of them have kind of been answered. I see there's one question here asked by Ruan, which Sandiso responded to in writing, but maybe she could just talk to it as well. And the question is, we know that innovation is key, but how can we help NPOs focus on innovation when they are functioning in survival mode due to the challenges caused by COVID? If you could just respond to that, Sandiso, thank you.
Yeah, so I run a small business. I know I'm on the commercial side, but I think we face a similar challenges. So I think your primary concern is rather staying afloat, and your some funding may have been withdrawn or delayed for due to COVID reasons. So and I think in a limitation of resources actually invites even like a lot of innovation amongst your team. So being not having much to work with is actually kind of like a good thing for you to become more innovative. So in this time, what we did as an organization, we actually signed up to a lot of the technology partners we'd want to work with or we admire. And a lot of them had webinars, and a lot of the webinars are actually free in most cases. So we upskilled ourselves by just leveraging free tools and resources, and also obviously the online learning platforms, Udemy, has a lot of free courses, and some of them are paid courses, and they only cost about 200 Rand. So we took a lot advantage of that as well, committing to watching free webinars on a weekly basis. That actually helped us a lot. And then also just having random sessions amongst our team on what you've learned in the past month with your webinar commitment. What can we bring into the organization? And I think that helped us become more innovative. And at the time, I mean, my company, we do small projects, so we kind of have to have somebody buy our product on a monthly basis, otherwise we don't stay afloat. So we actually had no new contracts between the month of May till October last year. That's about, I think, 6 months. So it is really, really tough. And using that time of the dead or the quiet time to actually build innovative products that are now serving us today has really, really been a blessing in disguise, because we've become more innovative as an organization. So I hope that helps you. I also run obviously unlimited resources, and I hope that you can consider the recommendations that I've provided as well. Thank you.
Rebecca, may I comment?
Thanks, Sandy. So I'm just going to give Kathy a chance because she's had her hand up, and then I'll come to you. Great.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that Farrell might have even been wanting to say the same thing, but what we found really interesting, and one of the questions that came through on the Q&A was that people felt distance from training and information. And I think what's so exciting about the new online space is that distance is narrowed, that gap is narrowed. And we are seeing that it's so exciting that organizations who've been outside of the main centers in Cape Town, Johannesburg, Durban, etc., who are some distance from where normally traditionally we'd run our training, they're actually able to access the training now online. So yeah, this is for me very exciting.
Thanks, Kathy. And Farrell, if you want to come in just for a minute, and then we will.
Yes, I would. So she's asking about, in the current challenges, how does she focus on technology? It's just to look at your strategy again and to see what is your future plan. Do you want to be around for 2050, 2060, or do you want to be out of the system next year? And unfortunately, or fortunately, as Vinolan said, this is the future. And so we need to pivot and we need to transition towards a form of digital. It doesn't have to be full on, it has to be incremental based on your resources. And I'm talking about both your human resources as well, because there has to be an appetite for that. And in addition to that, boards have to understand this is what is about to happen and needs to happen, and where their governance support is required. So it's about planning for the future without just falling into oh my word, we have to do this. No, you have to think about it carefully and do what you can with the resources that you have. So in some instance, you've probably got to raise funding in order for you to go onto the technology platform while you keep the other work, your core business, going in the way that your mission is stated.
Thanks, Farrell, and thank you all of the judges for your really valuable feedback. I hope that everyone has found it as useful as I have and interesting as I have. There were a few other questions around information sharing on the Q&A box. We will be in contact with you. There will be a press release, and we will be writing up case studies of the winners. So we'll share as much detail as we can about the proceedings today. But before we say goodbye to each other, I'd like to hand over to Knox to say some closing remarks. Thank you, Knox.
Thanks, Rebecca. A big congratulations to our winners. Well done to Bookdash and to the Phoenix Trust, and to all the organizations who entered and participated. Thank you for showing commitment to your organization's resilience and to ensure that you're able to continue serving your beneficiaries. Let's continue the work to build back better. A special thank you to our panel of judges, Kathy, Farrell, Sandiso, and Vinolan, for the time spent going through the applications and the many hours spent deliberating. Thank you for your diligence and commitment to the process. And finally, to the team at Trilog, thank you so much for walking this journey with us and pulling this initiative together, and for especially ensuring that the nonprofits had a smooth and seamless experience with the application process. And to also just highlight, there were a few comments in the chat about making the presentations available. We will be making these available, as well as the recording on the Trilog Knowledge Hub. So please do look out for that. And we'll also try and post the Book Dash clip that we were unable to flight this morning. And that brings us to the close of this morning's session. Thank you everyone for making the time and for connecting with us. And a congratulations once again to our winners. Thank you all.
Thank you. Farewell.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks all. Bye.